Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interviewed Reverend Michelle Wahila. Michelle moved to Paris 10 years ago, where she worked in the American Church, and then she started her own business, Ruffled by Grace. We talk about what it's like to help people get married on a daily basis in Paris and what the creativity goes into her writing. So welcome to the show, Michelle. I am so happy to have you here. We've been friends for quite some time, and it's fun to finally tell your story.
Oh, thank you, Crystal. You're one of my longest friends, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And so I want to go back to the beginning. I mean, we've worked together on several occasions. Michelle is working as a pastor in Paris. She's started her own business where she is the creative director and the main pastor for Ruffled by Grace. She basically helps people get married in Paris. Like whenever you want to elope or have a ceremony, she's the one that's going to write those beautiful words, tell your story, and marry you. But I want to go back to the beginning of what brought you to Paris.
Yeah, a long time ago, in what seems like a galaxy far away, I was called to be the pastor at the American Church in Paris, which is a large English-speaking congregation made up of people from all over the world. I served there for several years before becoming a freelancer, I guess. But that's where we met.
Exactly. And I remember shooting weddings at the American Church and seeing you and being like, wow, I didn't even know this was even a thing. Like this is a job. And the church was just so beautiful. And watching you work with these loving couples, it was just such a special thing. But talk a little bit about what it was like to move to Paris and start working at the American Church. Was that like a bit of culture shock? Was it everything people think it is when you move here? Talk about those first years.
I mean, our family was, a family of four. I have a spouse named Kevin and two kids who were really small when we moved. I had an infant he had just turned 1 year, and a 2-year-old when we moved across the ocean. So culture shock on every level, I guess, is the best way to say it. But you know that. I mean, all of us who've taken that big leap to move to Paris for whatever reason, there's that period of adjustment and learning how to live and be in a foreign culture. And it's, full of really, really big ups and really low lows, I think. But that was in 2012. So we've been here a while now.
Yeah, that we moved here the same year. And I think in the past 10 years, so much has changed for both of us. And Michelle recently bought her own home outside of Paris. They're setting it up to run weddings and do other fun events there. But leading up to that, I mean, working in the church, did you find it different working in a church in Paris versus working in a church back home in the States?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's obvious differences just because it was such a multicultural situation where English was the common denominator, but it didn't mean I was working with all Americans or everyone who was, English, but English was what brought people into the church. And so there were various reasons why people wanted to be there. And it was a community center for some people, and it was a meeting center for others. And so there were a lot of reasons why people would come in those church doors. And so it was just a totally different setting than what I had previously, been in. But it was like an adventure because it was so different. And so, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Crystal. It was
So just pause and then it's okay. I'll just delete that. That's no problem at all. But just pause and say, oh, like it was so different. You can
Yeah,
start
I
there.
will. Hold on. I got a message him or he'll call back. He knew. I think I told him 5 o'clock. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's no problem.
So it was just different. It was not the same setting I had been in, and it was working with people from all over the world, and also a different faith traditions, which was new for me as well, and really exciting to be a part of something that was like so much larger than yourself.
Yeah, and especially with, like you said, just English being the common denominator, but there was so many different cultures and so much work to be done. It probably was shocking on many levels. And what was one of the biggest things that surprised you about moving to France that you weren't expecting?
Oh gosh, too many to name. But I think one of the things that was most difficult for us was sort of adjusting. I mean, our kids were really young, but helping our kids to adjust and then understanding how different parenting styles were between the US and France, and just wanting to like fit in, but also wanting to retain a piece of our American culture for our kids who are American, and trying to like balance those two things and make friends. It was a definite challenge, but I think, the longer you are here, and I'm sure you can attest to this, it's just like you find your way, and it's not completely French and it's not completely American, but it's this weird middle path. It's pretty rich and full and good.
Yeah, we don't have like one home anymore, one culture. It's just a big like melting pot at this point.
Exactly. And I mean, there's something to be said about that. And you can take, the best of every world and try to like experience that for us, with our family, with our kids. And it's a great way to do life. It hopefully opens their eyes and their perspective a little bit.
And talk about like, so you worked at the church for many years, you lived in the church, and then you decided to make the move and start your own business. You started Ruffled by Grace. Talk a little bit about that business and what you do now.
Yeah. So after I left the church, I was pretty content spending more time with my boys, with my family. But it was, I think it was you, and a few people that I had worked with at the church that were like, "Why aren't you doing something like with all of the English speakers, or like, why aren't you doing weddings? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that?" And it was a pastor who I had worked with in Pittsburgh who reached out to me initially because she was looking for someone to marry a couple, one of her couples from her church, and they couldn't find anyone to do it. And so I agreed reluctantly, and it was such a blast. It was so amazing to be part of this couple's special moment in Paris, and they had worked so hard to get there and put together money to come, and like every detail was planned so well, and I love that. And it was just so inspiring, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I can do this. And so one wedding led to like
Yeah.
4 weddings, which led to like 50 weddings, which led to 100 weddings, and it just grew and grew. And I just thought, well, I didn't know. I didn't know who needed an unemployed English speaking pastor in Paris, And I realized that there was a place for me in Paris, and that was a cool
Yeah.
realization.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about what that's like. I mean, you're part of a day that is, some would say, some of like the most important day of their lives in a lot of ways, and a big part of what you do is you ask them for their stories of their love and how they met and who they are, and you put together a reading. I mean, talk through about that process, what that's like.
It's such a great and creative process. Like, there is, for me, again, because I'm coming out of this church tradition too, it's like a sacred process of like collecting someone's story, and they've entrusted you with that. So you better do something good with it, But I ask a lot of questions and I get to know them as well as I can. And I take everything that they tell me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, like everything that makes up who they are. And I try to write something creative and unique for them and something that like they want for their day. Because I think, again, as a pastor coming out of the church, what I've seen has been that people don't really want the standard, box service. And that's what turns people off. And so I'm able to do this very different and creative thing because I'm not inside the church. I don't have to follow the rules, and that's like a huge gift, I think, both for the couples and for me, because I have that privilege of writing and telling a love story.
And did you consider yourself a writer before? Because a big part of what you do now is writing.
Yeah, I think I don't know that I ever would have been like, I am a writer, but we write a lot in my tradition, and I write liturgy, which is like poetry for worship, and that is something that's always been really like part of my heart song, something I've loved and have enjoyed doing. And so it was a natural leap to this kind of storytelling, this kind of creative writing. But could I have told you 10 years ago that that's what I'd be doing now? No, probably not.
Yeah, it's something very different from, like you said, like being in kind of this rigid system. And now you have the freedom to tell people's stories how they want it to be told, but also, bringing a faith into that and bringing that love as well. Like it can be done in many ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the church. Oftentimes we're in a park near the Eiffel Tower, or we're on the river Seine, and you're just there for this moment. What does that feel like for you?
Well, I think couples coming to Paris to get married, like they want to be in front of the Eiffel Tower. They want to be along the Seine. And so like having the freedom to say yes to any venue, any time, we get up at sunrise in summer for those ceremonies. Being able to say yes to that is so special. And like being a part of that moment, like there's nothing that compares to it, because it's so special to these people who, again, are entrusting you with their story, and you're there to make it happen. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any fun stories? You've worked with so many couples. Talk about some of your favorite or funny or crazy stories from doing these marriage ceremonies.
There's always something. We know that in Paris, like things happen. The transportation doesn't work. People are hours late. I had a couple call me and say that they lost their mother-in-law in the airport. They couldn't find her and they were worried about missing their time slot. And I said, like, it's okay. We'll just wait. We'll find her. I'm not going to require you to have your wedding before your mother-in-law gets here. Like, no. Which, it just, you laugh about it later, but obviously really super stressful for them. And, I had this one couple who I always recommend folks get the bulk of their pictures before the ceremony so that they're not rushing. And usually like tourists are less in the beginning. It's like better for them. But on this particular day, it was boring. And so by the time I got to them and to their lovely photographer and to the musician, this couple was wet, unhappy. I was like, oh no, we have to pull a wedding ceremony off. And I was like, let's stop. Let's have a coffee in this very lovely, historical, in fact, cafe by the Palais Royal and take a moment. And we did. And we had coffee and it was delightful. And by the end of that coffee, everyone was laughing and happy. Their friends had arrived because they had lost their friends somehow in the mix. Yeah. And we were just able to like pull together this moment in the pouring rain in Paris. But we had umbrellas, we had a violin, we had a covered passageway that was beautiful. And I was like, fine, we can do this. And I always tell couples like, that's my job. I need to pull it off no matter what is happening in Paris, which you never know what it's going to be. So you have to be creative.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity that goes into wedding planning for sure. And do you have advice for people who want to get married in Paris? Like any ideas or obviously hire you, but what are some common things that come up?
Well, I think, and you as well, to be the photographer extraordinaire, which is another piece of your creative work. But I think the couples that have the best time come like without expectations for what it has to be, and they're willing to like be flexible in terms of time, location, even last minute changes because as you know, like roads can close or there's a running race, there's a marathon going through or, whatever it is that could happen. If you come without very rigid expectations, you can come and enjoy the moment. And that's like my one piece of advice that I give to everyone because I think we can make it all happen. Like we can
Yeah.
get the vendors hired to make a great day. But if you're not flexible and just like, I don't want to say spontaneous because everything's planned so well, but maybe just flexible is the right word to say, like, we can take it as it comes. We're not going to care about rain. We're not going to care about a group of tourists who stop and want to watch the ceremony and applaud at the end. Like if you can come without those sorts of expectations, you will not be disappointed and you will like enjoy it in a way that you probably can't even anticipate until you're there, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't plan every emotion, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. And, like things happen and silly things just like any other wedding day. But I think there's the pressure of Paris because it's so perfect. It's so ideal. People have saved money to come. Maybe they've brought their family and like you can see how it could build expectation.
Yeah,
But if
definitely.
you can let it go, then you're bound to have an experience that's much more like authentic and enjoyable and perfect, and which is ironic to say, but true.
Yeah, it's very true. And like you said, just being flexible is so important. And for you, what is the most romantic place in Paris to have a ceremony? Where do you like to perform ceremonies?
Oh, there's too many. And we've done some really beautiful ceremonies together. I really like to find the hidden gems or the places that maybe you don't think of or are maybe not as iconic but quite hidden. And even something as beautiful as Parc Monceau, where there's these great willow trees and this like Colosseum looking piece of architecture, like it's unexpected. And your couples can go and still get those iconic Louvre and Eiffel Tower photos, but you can tuck your ceremony away into a little garden or into a little park, and it's romantic and like made just for you in that moment. So I like those spots. I don't know about you, but I think those are the best ones.
Yeah, I think it's really sweet, especially some of the small parks in Paris. They're really beautiful and romantic. And when you're away from the Eiffel Tower, you don't see like the million people or the tourists like cheering you on. If you want the cheering, definitely go to the Eiffel Tower. But yeah, there's just too many places to pick, like you said. And where do you see your work going? Like, what is the future for Ruffled by Grace? What would you hope to do with your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one that I'm not even sure I can entirely answer. I think if we've learned anything in the last couple of years, it's that things can be life and, the world can be rather unpredictable. But I think what I'd love to see happen is to continue to build a platform where I can speak and write and be a part of people's lives. And maybe that's like a jump into other things. I do lead retreats and creative kind of workshops. Weddings are certainly and will remain a huge piece of what Ruffled by Grace is, but it's really lovely to be able to work with everyone, not just couples, and to be able to give them kind of a similar Ruffled by Grace experience of beauty and creativity and, joyfulness. And so that has to be more than weddings, if that makes sense. And of course, I cannot forget countryside weddings, which you said that we had purchased a home, and part of that dream, that purchase, was to have a place here. And whether or not it's for weddings or retreats or respite, picnics, whatever, enjoying the gardens and being here, that's part of that dream too. So it's a big one, I guess.
Yeah, it is a big one. We have to dream big, right? And I think that what you said is really beautiful about spreading that joy and creating, these special moments can be more than just weddings. Like Ruffled by Grace can definitely grow into something bigger. And I love the ideas of retreats, and France has so much to offer, as we've learned. I mean, we've stuck by it for 10 years, even if it wasn't always loving us back. We've done a lot, and it's a place that feels like I see it as kind of like the land of opportunity, like there's so many people to help them experience, all that there is to offer there.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of my couples and clients who are coming, they've already been to Paris, and maybe they've done the normal tourist things. And so they're looking for experiences that are already bigger than those 3 days in Paris. And obviously Paris is iconic and beautiful, and there's always things to discover and explore. But like you said, France has so much to offer. And for us, and in the joy of being here for so many years now, like, we're starting to see and experience those things that are off the beaten path. And I think we've benefited so much from it that you just you want to share that with other people. And certainly my couples and the people coming over, so yeah, to share.
Yeah. And it's time to expand. And how do you define creativity in your own words?
Such a good question. I mean, for me, creativity is part of being made in the divine image, because I do believe that we are all so uniquely made and created that we're given that spark to create. And so creativity as a definition for me has to involve the divine, but I think it's also a connection with the heart. And as a maker, if you will, if you want to use that term, our best creative endeavors are also heart endeavors, that they are connected with a deep sense of joy or love, or the things that make our heart sing. And so it's those two pieces for me: the spark of the divine and the idea that it connects to our hearts somehow.
I think that's really beautiful. I think that's really well said. I mean, it's all about, like you said, the connection between heart and joy. And sometimes we don't even know where this stuff is coming from, but it all comes back to just what is exciting, what is lighting that fire for us, that we want to pursue it or go towards it.
Absolutely. Because you don't need religious language to know that you can, that there is something that it lights your fire, as you said, and that you can be passionate about. And that's not religious, in any way. It is, I think, part of our human calling to co-create some sort of adventure, either with the people that we love and that we're living, with and among, or just for ourselves and for joy and for something that gives us that spark of joy.
I think that's really well said. And why do you think that creatives are attracted to Paris in particular? I mean, there's been so many generations. Why do you think that is?
It's everything, it's the food and the culture and the art and the history that's there. I mean, certainly now, looking back at all of those things, why were creatives attracted earlier, when we can't say, oh, there's this huge history. I can't answer that question, but I can see now that there's just this history of rich culture and cuisine and architecture that captures your soul, and so being part of that history and wanting to capture a piece of that for ourselves. I mean, that's the joy. that's what's creative, and so I think like it's a natural like yearning to be part of that, and Paris just exudes it. So you want to be a part of it. You want to capture a piece of what it has for yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like to be a part of it, like you said, like something bigger than yourself that's been going on for quite some time. Why would you not want to join that if you're like already an artist?
Exactly.
And how do you keep your ideas evolving and changing? Like, how do you keep coming up with new things? Are there some things that inspire you or things you do to keep your ideas evolving?
I think, well, a couple of things. I think the first thing is to rest. And I know that's maybe like counterintuitive, but finding ways to rest, whether it's to be in my garden or taking a run, reading, I think we all need that in order to recharge and keep imagination flowing. But also then like looking at what other people are doing and reading and watching films and, like taking new trends and exploring them, like whatever it is, staying current. That you have to feed yourself as well. So like the first thing would be to rest, and the second thing would be to feed yourself with other people, whether it's just people you admire, your heroes, or great writers, and to like take that all in, soak it up.
I think that's great advice. And yeah, rest is huge. I think especially for North Americans, we sometimes forget to rest. So I think we definitely need to listen to that because we can't really be inspired or get going if we're exhausted.
Exactly.
And talk a little bit about, yeah, and tell us some of the best advice that you've ever been given.
I mean, it might be, in fact, the idea of needing to rest and really like taking care of myself in order, you know, like for my cup to be full and to overflow and to have creativity and to have joy to share with other people. Like you have to refill. And so, rest as not just a side note to life, but really incorporated into life. And part of being on this farm now and just walking through the gardens and tending them and sitting in the Adirondack chair and looking at the pond, like that kind of rest that's like so still and quiet and necessary. Having that advice given to me and actually taking it is, those are two different things, but it's not lost on me that I have this opportunity to rest, and that was probably the best piece of advice I ever got about being a pastor or being a creative. And yeah, so I try.
I know it's not easy, especially being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being a woman. It's hard to sit still. We all have to do that on a regular basis, and I think that's a really great note to end on. And where can people connect with you and learn more about your work and hire you?
You can find me on social media by using Ruffled by Grace as a hashtag, or basically my username across platforms. And you can go to my website, which is just ruffledbygrace.com, and find me there. But I'm pretty active on Twitter and Instagram, so always good to connect with folks from across the globe. And yeah, come to visit Paris and have a wedding or a day of self-love and let me plan it.
I cannot agree more, guys. If you need help planning or wedding or vacation or just rest, contact Michelle. She's great. She's a woman who wears many hats. And thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, just cheers to all of your creative endeavors in 2023.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.